They're going after us because they want to go after you, okay? They're going to cancel everybody out there. And this is at the point where you just have to ignore the rules as it relates to what opinions, what jokes are permissible and what aren't. So what is cancel culture? Well, look, let me explain this to you. It's not just offensive jokes, okay? It's not just that, though that matters. It's not just that opinions are not even allowed to be expressed in media or, more importantly, on any of the big tech platforms today. And it's not just that even some opinions which, you know, they deem permissible on these platforms are only permissible provided the person expressing them has the right race, gender, orientation, or BMI index, as we now know by the increasing marginalized classes. It's the totality of these changing rules, ever-changing rules designed to change at a moment's notice in order to box you in order to box in our speech and ultimately separate all of us from one another. It almost mirrors the Tower of Babel a little bit. I know some edgy atheists are going to get mad. Just think of it as a parable. So let's start off with this jokes. Once upon a time, okay, people could tell these things, and I know a lot of kids out there. You know, it's like Indiana Jones taking time off from his temping job, going to find some artifact. They were called jokes. They were known by their, what are you talking about, Junior? Jokes! We've got to leave class, there's no time! They were jokes. They were part of a broader umbrella of entertainment and, more importantly, human interaction, which used to be known as humor, okay? Now, the following that I'm about to list here are just some examples of third-rail topics of discussion, but more importantly, even jokes, which may in and of themselves not directly violate big tech policies. We need to separate the cancel mob and the policies of big tech. Right now we're talking about the cancel mob might exert pressure, demanding the removal of your job, your social standing, and otherwise any ability to maintain a livelihood for you or your family. That's also what's a real problem here. You're not just beholden to the FCC, which used to be don't say anything scatological. For example, you could say, what a shithead, but you couldn't say, I gotta take a shit. Which, by the way, I took one between the two streams.
That's true.
Nice.
When I get nervous,
he ran out.
When I get nervous, buddy, I get the runs. So
Nightmarish.
let's talk about one of these topics, race. Okay, this is the third rail for jokes. You can't make jokes about race anymore, right? With the exceptions being that, I'm outlining the rules for you, said person telling a joke as a member of that specific race. However, it's only provided that said person of said race has the right opinion. Being a representative of said race, for example, Candace Owens, the Hodge twins, can't make black jokes even though they are black because they're conservatives, so their political persuasions result in them being called coons or Uncle Toms. Or, of course, in some cases, jokes about other ethnicities, even if you are the right race, are impermissible if they are aimed at a currently more marginalized community. For example, up until recently, blacks could make jokes about Asians. That was allowed until the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes in the community, largely stemming from those in the black community, which is something Nancy Pelosi won't tell you between D-perms. Now, another topic, number 2, LGBTQ AAIP. You know how I know? Because some people will be mad that I didn't get enough letters, and some people will be mad that I didn't put in the plus. Even if I were queer as a $3 bill, I could be the victim of the cancel mob because, well, actually it's AAIP, EPIFO in a silent Q. We already had a Q. There's another one. So you can't make jokes about LGBTQ AAIP anymore, lest you be accused, of course, of transphobia, homophobia, my favorite, xenophobia, which means fear of everything, or the GoldenEye installment of the James Bond film. It should be noted, however, that this supersedes rule number 1, the race. Again, provided that the current news cycle has presented said group as the more marginalized class. For reference, see Dave Chappelle's jokes, a black guy, about the alphabet community. Yeah. Caught flack for that one. Yeah. But then he got back in their good graces when he attacked the wrong black person with Candace Owens. Right. Okay, that's the social currency. Number 3, so we have race. You can't make jokes about that. Can't make jokes about LGBTQ AAIP. Also, gender. Men cannot make jokes about women, lest you be accused of sexism. Now, by the way, it's recommended that you refrain from even using the term man or woman, as modern gender theory, which is a very modern theory, by the way, not based in science, has stated that sex is biological while gender is a societal construct. And it exists on an endless, ever-expanding spectrum, you know, like the universe. Now, here's the thing. Sex and gender are also no longer considered separate. When we used to have this conversation at the Change My Mind, people say, well, sex and gender are different. Well, that's changed now, as seen by the fact that you can change your sex on your driver's license. You can compete in women's-based sports predicated on sex. So they're no longer considered separate in all circles of LGBTQ AAIP, thought circles now, some would say cult circles, because biological terms are considered increasingly offensive as seen by the introduction of terms natal male and natal female to replace the wildly offensive Gestapo-based terminology as biological male or biological female. I take this moment to apologize to any of the neonatal pansexuals this may offend. You haven't achieved marginalized class yet. Number 4, we have race, we have LGBTQAIP, we have gender. Again, this is just the first portion of cancel culture. Wait! You can't you're not allowed to make jokes about the morbidly obese, even, mind you, if said land whales are openly advocating for dangerous and unhealthy lifestyles, which fly, of course, in opposition to the entirety of human medical history and scientific literature on the issue of obesity. Obesity, man, what? Huh? What'd he say?
Where am I?
The issue of obesity, long-term health outcomes, all-cause mortality, arterial plaque, lest you be considered fat-phobic. That was a run-on sentence. I'm tired, I need a donut. Number 5, Islam. So we have race, LGBTQAIP, gender, we have weight, and Islam, of course. And this one is interesting because of the unholy alliance that you see from the left in Islam when they're convenient. You know, it's like, well, you know what? We don't want to talk about not allowing women to drive, but we like that you hate the Jews. So
Hey, that's on you.
this is interesting. Because I'm not just talking about here the drawing of Prophet Muhammad or even painting of Prophet Muhammad in menstrual blood as we did. Sorry, but you know that. I'm not.
I did not do that.
I'm not talking about that. That was Nick DiPaolo. He called it. Like, you put my face next to a picture of you out of your mind? Like, you're Nick DiPaolo. He's like, yeah, I don't want to die. So I'm not just talking about with Islam drawing or painting the Prophet Muhammad itself, which of course will result in the call for your immediate execution from members of said religion of peace. But more disturbing to me than having my head lopped off is that rather than standing up for the freedom of speech, you know, the foundation of Western civilization, which, by the way, you can also get in trouble for saying because that's white supremacy.
Oh. Right.
Even though at the same time we have to acknowledge that these people are coming from other countries because the situation is so dire to the United States. You go, oh, so you're saying the United States is superior to Mexico, Honduras. Why would they want to come here? Because they want new experiences? Because it's a crap hole. Because those countries aren't very good. So what's disturbing to me when we talk about Islam is not the fact that you can't draw Muhammad. We know that, right? You have these soft expectations for members of the religion of peace. It's that those on the left don't stand up for the freedom of speech. We see terrorism's unholy woke allies calling for the immediate firing and public admonishment of anyone who even dares to broach the topic. That should be one that, especially all the edgy atheists, you know, who populate YouTube. You know, I get it. You just don't like Christians because you don't like accountability, and hell's a nasty thought. It's going to be nastier when you're there. But you would think that you could still, hey, look, here's a gimme, guys. Islam. It has all the things that you don't like about Christianity, namely monotheism and some sort of accountability, heaven, hell. Also, murder. But no. We're at a point right now where logic doesn't apply. Again, defining cancel culture. Now we'll move on from jokes to forbidden actual opinions. It's not just the topics that are off limits for playful banter or comedy, which we'll get to more in a second. I know I just have to get this out here. The following that I'm about to list are examples of actual opinions which are officially declared impermissible or banned by all major social media platforms who control over 90% of the entirety of digital human interactions. Some would argue as high as 98%, given the day, depending on the day. So, number 1, an opinion that is not allowed according to policy. COVID policy skepticism. Now, let me be really clear about this. I don't mean saying that COVID is not a real thing, which, by the way, I think people should be allowed to. I don't agree with it. COVID is lethal. COVID is deadly. But you need to look at the policy. Does that mean that because it's significantly more deadly than the flu for older people, but I'm not even allowed to say, look at the CDC numbers available at louderwithcrowder.com for anyone under the age of 25. I'm not allowed to make the comparison because that got our last video banned.
Yep.
But I'm talking about skepticism even with policy saying, you know what? I don't know if lockdowns are a good idea. Well, why do you say that? Because you're anti-science? No, because the homicide, the suicide, the murder, the mental health, all of the shutting down of businesses, the unemployment. Oh, so you just hate science. How'd you enjoy chopping that dick off and considering it a vagina? Yeah? Good. Thanks, Copernicus. So according to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, you are not allowed to express opinions that run contrary to the World Health Organization. And when I say that, not the World Health Organization, their narrative on COVID or the current CDC guidelines. This can result in the immediate removal of content, even if it directly agrees with the stance of the World Health Organization or CDC held as back as 4 days ago. You don't need a DeLorean, just a working memory better than the former Vice President of the United States. Now, I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm not talking about anything close to that extreme. What I am saying is that doctors have been removed from all platforms working in unison for suggesting that the initial death rate projections of over 2.2 million in the United States within the first year alone were incorrect. Doctors who said that is incorrect were removed, and they never get reinstated.
No.
Nope.
Even though now they're right. And the person who conducted the Imperial College of London study had to step down in shame. I'm talking about democratically elected officials being suspended for questioning the alliance of the World Health Organization, their ties to China, refusal to acknowledge Taiwan's existence, or even providing reasoned presentations as to why lockdowns do far more harm than the virus itself. And look, I know that some people will point to examples of content like this right now being available and say, well, see, it's allowed. But again, that doesn't change the policy of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We don't know. Could be on Amazon. They ban books.
Yeah.
Yep.
By the way, when you start banning books and you call everybody else a Nazi, how about you go, wait, hold on a second, banning books. If Hitler made that his MO, maybe take some time for self-reflection, asshole. But again, it doesn't change the policy. We've seen that once said content or the content creator becomes large or influential enough, it results in their removal. So just because you can find a couple now doesn't mean they won't be removed tomorrow. For an example, see us.
Took 4 minutes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Now here's another one. You can't talk about COVID. These are the official policies of big tech. Election integrity. Again, official policy of YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. It is impermissible to express the opinion, even if supported by data, precedent, verifiable research, that election fraud could even, to suggest it could even take place. And I don't even want to say a massive scale. I don't even want to say a scale that could affect the outcome of the election. You're not allowed to suggest that election fraud could even take place on a semi-large scale. Call it medium. Call it McDonald's McFlurry small, but not kid-size scale. Or that mere voting anomalies could even occur due to gaps in voter verification systems or oversight. That's a violation of policy and will result in immediate removal. So you can't tell jokes about race, about LGBTQAIP, about gender, about
Wait.
I don't even what you the fact Islam. You can't. So these are just things that are third rails as far as
Right,
topics.
yeah.
Policies. You're not allowed to talk about COVID to be skeptical. You're not allowed to be skeptical as it relates to election processes, let's say, not results.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Just someone showing up saying, hey, I'm Bob Cook. I live at 123 Maple. Good enough for me. If you say, hey, I think that's a problem, we need a little bit more, ban. Another policy, transgender policy on the big tech platforms. Now, this one is, because it sort of seems redundant, I'm not talking about the woke mob as we were addressing previously. It's in fact a violation of policy to go against current transgender dogma and refer to someone by their biologically appropriate pronouns, or to even suggest that untested, unfounded, potentially dangerous hormone blockers and chemical castration for children could be bad. That can result in the content or the content creator being removed. Why? This is considered in their policies an attack on immutable characteristics or denying the existence of a transgender individual, and again, could result in the removal of the content or the person entirely. So look, this is cancel culture. Let's add it up. Let's add this all up. Societally right now, one can't make jokes about race, gender, LGBTQAIP, obesity, Islam, and on the ground of policy, one is not allowed to express opinions or present arguments, no matter how qualified they are, in the face of maybe some alternative strategic COVID approaches, the election integrity or voting anomalies, or even just ways to strengthen voter verification, or even for doctors, including all of Johns Hopkins, to express medical opinions shared by a huge percentage, and by huge percentage I mean the ones who tell the truth,
Yeah.
of the medical dangers of gender reassignment surgery. Can't talk about. Let me ask you, do you feel free? Do you feel like you can have conversations? Do you feel more connected to your fellow man? Because at least a couple of those, pair them up, the majority of the country and certainly the world agree with.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.